We're glad we get a lot of comments and feedback and email here at Muscle Car of the Week, and today we're sharing some of the best. There was one car we recently featured that got all kinds of feedback, kind of surprising to me because the car was the 1991 Chevrolet Corvette ZR1. And the ZR1 Corvette, first of all, it's not really a muscle car, so it's a little bit off our mark, but also being a late model Corvette, it didn't really strike me as one that would get a lot of responses, but we got a ton of mail on it. And what people were interestingly talking about was that the ZR1 kind of blended in with the normal Corvette, so a lot of people didn't really realize that that car was very, very special. And some people were making comments of, it's a 91 Corvette, it's not really worth anything. Others were saying, no, no, it's a ZR1. Well, we've learned that technically you're kind of both right, because the ZR1, although it's a fantastic car, today really doesn't have much of a resale market. We recently found a 91 ZR1 on eBay for about 15,000 bucks. So I think the message of all that conversation was that if you want a heck of a deal on a screaming performance car right now, you can buy one of those early 90s ZR1 Corvettes and have yourself a heck of a car. Maintaining them isn't exactly cheap, but if you find a good one, you could do really well. We had one more interesting piece of feedback on that green ZR1 about the color. It was definitely an early 90s color, but it was recycled from the 60s, and there was another car of a similar color that was also a land speed holder that we featured, which was that Studebaker Avanti with the supercharger on it. Very similar color, high performance car, pretty neat. Next, we're going to look at some comments we got on episode 263, which was the lemon twist yellow Hemi Cuda. And this car was an all-original car. It's not been restored. It's wearing most of its original paint except for a few touch-ups. And the odometer is showing 28,000 miles. And some of the feedback we got were on the mileage in both directions. Some people said, wow, it's only got 28,000 miles. That's really unbelievable, it's so low. Well, other people said the 28,000 miles on a Hemi Cuda might actually be kind of high, because a lot of these cars were bought for drag racing. So they were raced on the weekends, not driven during the week, and many of them blew up the engines or had unfortunate crashes or whatnot. So to see one with 28,000 miles, that could be a high mileage number. And another question we had was, well, how do you really know that the car only has 28,000 miles on it, considering it's a 5-place odometer and it could have flipped, it could be 128,000 miles? That's a great question, and a lot of times you can tell by looking at the condition of the car, things like the brake pedal, the gas pedal, the carpeting, checking if all the original parts are still there, if the parts are date coded correctly like they came from the factory. But another thing we rely on is documentation. So if this car had a stack of papers that came with it indicating repairs at certain dates at certain mileages. So today with 28,000 miles on the clock, we might have seen repairs in the 70s and 80s that were documented, or sale documents where a title transfer happened at a date at a certain mileage. So the documentation is really, really important to make sure you know you have a legitimate car. But in this case, yeah, that yellow Cuda has 28,000 on it, and that's either a high number or a low number, depending on how you look at it. Viewers of our show know that the owners of the Brothers Collection are not afraid to lean on these cars every once in a while, and where we can, we like to exercise them in our little parking lot and do a burnout or two if we can. And recently there's been a couple comments about the Burnout, saying that, hey, these cars, they're supposed to be high performance muscle cars, and we're seeing a brake stand a lot, which means you step on the brakes, give it gas, get the rear tires spinning, and then go, as opposed to just hammer down, light them up, and take off that way. Well, the main reason why we do it that way is to get a better shot. When we have 2 or 3 cameras shooting the car, we can't have the driver put the hammer down and then just take off, because then we lose that whole effect of capturing that burnout. So we ask our drivers to do a little bit of a brake stand and get those tires good and heated up and make some smoke, and then take off. So it's not that the cars won't do it, it's just a style that we like to use. And as we've shown you before, there are some cars that might need a little bit more of a tune-up, and they don't do it very well, but we try to show you the best that we can. We've alluded in the past that the Brothers Collection is constructing a museum where their cars will be on display for the public to come visit. We will keep you posted on the progress. It is not yet open, but they are getting close. It is very, very neat. We've shown you some shots of cars inside the museum as it was being built, but it looks very different almost every day. So we'll keep you posted here if you subscribe to Muscle Car of the Week. But in the meantime, there's a few other fun car things to do that you can go check out. One that I recommend is, if you're in the Los Angeles area, go to the Peterson Automotive Museum and take the Vault Tour. I was just there recently. The Vault Tour are cars that are technically not on display. They're downstairs in the basement level, and there's several hundred of them packed in there. So it's not a fancy museum type display, but there's a tour guide there, a good friend of mine, his name is Chris. He will take you car to car to car and tell you the individual story about everything about that car. Not necessarily all muscle cars, but a great time, a low-cost tour to go take. And of course, coming up in November, the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals in Chicago this year is celebrating their 10th anniversary. It's going to be a huge show, a lot of very cool limited production muscle cars, things you've never seen before in person, things that have never been on display together with theme displays. So we're going to do a whole Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals preview episode coming up, but just make sure you get that on your calendar. Go to mcacn.com for dates and travel information about that. We really appreciate all the comments and feedback we get, because we don't always get everything right, and it's nice to see that people are watching. And speaking of watching, make sure you stay tuned, because we've got another cool car from somewhere here in the Brothers Collection for you to check out next time on Muscle Car of the Week.